The air in the chamber, thick with the scent of jasmine and unspoken resentments, suddenly splintered. A sound so sharp, so utterly out of place amidst the rustle of silk and the hushed whispers of power, that it tore through the very fabric of the Sultan's peace. It was not a blow meant for the cheek, no. That would be too simple, too common. This was a strike aimed at the crown itself, at the inviolability of a man whose word was law, whose person was sacred. I stood behind my pillar, an unseen witness as the world seemed to hold its breath. The camera, that silent observer, glided past faces frozen in disbelief. Eunuchs, concubines, even the Grand Vizier, each a statue carved from sudden dread. Their eyes wide with a terror born not of pain but of transgression. She turned away, her back a wall of fury, a testament to a pride that had finally, spectacularly exploded. Her heavy robes swished, a whisper that seemed to mock the absolute silence now reigning. And on the face of the man who had dared to provoke such a storm, a slow, dark crimson began to bloom. Not a bruise yet, but a promise of one, a stark, undeniable mark against his pale skin. A stain. This was no mere slap, dear ladies. This was a gauntlet thrown, a dynasty challenged, a bloodline stained. In that deafening quiet, a silent scream echoed through every velvet curtain, every gilded archway. And I tell you, in that very moment, a war was born. A war whispered into existence, its first poisoned breath drawn in the heart of the palace, beneath the shadow of a single, unforgivable act. The light, you see, it cheats. It pours through the arched windows of the Sultan's chamber, bathing the gold leaf and the polished marble in a deceptive glow. A warmth that promises peace, perhaps even divine favor, to those who sit on these thrones. But look closer, my dear. Look beyond the shimmer. Look at her. She stands there, framed by such splendor, a figure of porcelain and iron. Yet her gaze? It holds no trace of the sun's embrace, no hint of the false serenity this place projects. Only cold resolve. A stillness that is more terrifying than any storm, more absolute than any decree. She has not uttered a single word since the incident that shattered the court's fragile illusion. Not a sound has escaped her lips to betray the tempest raging within. Her silence, a weapon honed sharper than any blade. But every thought, I assure you, every silent calculation brewing behind those luminous, unyielding eyes is already a verdict. A judgment passed upon those who would dare to diminish her. A destiny sealed for all who inhabit this gilded cage. Do you feel it? The very air in this chamber grows taut, stretched thin by the weight of her unspoken fury, humming with a tension that portends a seismic shift. A wisp of crimson silk. It lies there on the cool, unforgiving marble floor, fallen. Dismissed by the hurried, unseeing steps of eunuchs, ignored by the flitting shadows of lesser courtiers who dared not linger. A trifle, one might think. A mere scrap of finery, easily replaced. But not to her. For that, my friends, was her silk. A personal banner, a fragment of her identity, now soiled, now a stark, crimson symbol of the indignity she suffered. And no one, not a single soul in this vast, whispering palace dared to touch it. Not out of respect, no, but out of a primal, instinctive fear. For what it represented, perhaps, or for what she, in her quiet, dangerous fury, represented. A boundary crossed. A line drawn in the sand, or rather, on the marble. Slowly, with a grace that bordered on the ritualistic, she lowered herself. A motion that spoke not of subservience, but of an impending coronation of vengeance. Her fingers, long and elegant, reached out, not to retrieve a lost trinket, but to reclaim a piece of her shattered honor, to gather the scattered remnants of her power. As her fingertips brushed the fabric, a tremor, subtle yet profound, ran through the very foundations of this dynasty. This was no mere cloth, you understand. This was a gauntlet, silently cast. a challenge laid bare before the Sultan's very bloodline, a declaration of war veiled in the softest silk. The weight of that small crimson square was heavier than any crown. Behind these opulent walls, where the air hangs heavy with the cloying scent of intrigue and the sickly sweetness of sherbet, a web begins to spin. A network, unseen by the casual eye, yet more intricate than any master weaver's dream. It is a web woven of the finest silk, yes, threads so thin they vanish in the flickering lamplight, indistinguishable from the dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. But each delicate filament, I tell you, each gossamer strand is a premonition, a dark harbinger of betrayal and the inevitable fall that awaits those who stand in her path. This is the slow dance of revenge, choreographed in the hidden corners of the soul. The grand chamber, once a stage for celebrations and pronouncements, now hums with a different energy. A low, persistent vibration, a frequency only the truly observant can discern. The subtle shifts and glances exchanged across opulent tables, the lingering pause in a smile that once promised loyalty. The way a whispered word, ostensibly innocent, can harden into a clandestine command that will ripple through the palace like poison in the well. No one is meant to witness these transformations, these minute calibrations of power, these quiet, deadly maneuvers. No one is meant to see the turning of the tides, the quiet forging of alliances in the name of vengeance, the careful setting of traps. But we, standing here in the eternal shadows of this ancient court, silent as the stones themselves, we see everything. We watch the threads being laid, one by one, into the intricate pattern of destruction. We hear the silence that precedes the storm, a silence pregnant with unspoken threats. And we know, with a certainty that chills the soul, that the dance of reckoning has begun. The map, my dear, is about to be redrawn, thread by silken thread. The echo of it, brothers and sisters, lingers still within these hallowed, shadowed walls. Not the crude clang of steel, nor the roar of a charging army, but the sharp, singular report of flesh against flesh. A slap, a mere moment of human indignity, yet it was a tremor that ran deeper than any earthquake, reaching the very bedrock of this empire. You, who understand the quiet ferocity beneath a silken gown, know that a woman's anger, once awakened, possesses a will that can bend the mightiest of katanas, can shatter the strongest of thrones. Indeed, where a man might draw a sword in fury, a woman, especially one of high birth, begins to weave a web. For this, Game of Queens is not played on sun-drenched battlefields, but in the labyrinthine passages behind power, in the deceptive calm of courtyards, and in the venomous silence between smiles. The insult, delivered with such cold precision, was not merely to a person. It was a challenge to a bloodline, a whisper of insolence against the sacred order itself. And from that moment, the tapestry of loyalty, woven through generations with threads of gold and iron, began to unravel. Thread by painstaking thread, exposing the dark, knotted strands of betrayal beneath. The foundations of trust, once deemed immutable, began to crumble, not with a crash, but with the insidious grit of shifting sand. Look closely, beyond the Grand Vizier's frown or the Sultan's distant gaze. See the veiled figures moving with purpose through the dim-lit corridors of the palace, their hands clutched around small, discreet pouches. Within, not jewels, but messages, inscribed on the finest parchment, sometimes with invisible ink secured with wax seals soon to be broken. A swift courier, his face a mask of practiced indifference, would slip through the city gates under the cloak of midnight, bearing words that carried more weight than 1,000 swords. These were not declarations of war, but of intent, of shifting allegiances, of dynasty remade, not by conquest, but by insidious design, where every move was a calculation, every gesture a coded command. Consider the scroll that found its way into the hands of a forgotten princess, exiled to a distant province, her heart still burning with the injustice of her banishment. Its surface was plain, unassuming, yet beneath its seal lay a promise, or perhaps a more chilling threat. The moment her trembling fingers pressed against the hardened wax, breaking the imprint of the imperial crest, a silent pact was sealed. An oath, once sworn in the gilded halls of the palace and held sacred by tradition, had just turned to dust. The silence that followed was deafening, for in that instant she understood with chilling clarity. The familial ties, the very bloodline that bound them, once thought unbreakable, were now but instruments to be wielded or discarded in a grander, more brutal game. The poison had been administered not through a chalice, but through the bitter draught of ambition and perceived slight, a slow-acting venom designed to erode all opposition. This was the beginning of a war waged without banners, fought with carefully chosen words and perfectly timed gestures, each one a strategic blow. A war for the very soul of the bloodline, for the right to dictate which branch would bear fruit and which would wither into obscurity. Every whispered counsel in a private chamber, every exchanged glance across a crowded room, every gift of silk subtly imbued with a hidden meaning. These were the arrows in a battle where the true enemy remained perpetually shrouded in shadow. And the map, my friends, the vast, intricate map of this empire, was about to be redrawn, not by the march of armies, but by the relentless, unseen will of women scorned. The fight for tomorrow, for power beyond reckoning, had begun in the most intimate yet most dangerous of arenas. The whispers, you see, they begin as delicate breezes, rustling the heavy silks of the court. Then they grow, turning into currents, pushing against the very foundations of the Sultan's house. But even the fiercest wind eventually dies, leaving behind a stillness. A stillness that demands more than whispers. A stillness that demands action. The shadow, that silent observer I spoke of, the one lurking behind these very pillars, now finds its moment. No longer content with merely watching, with merely influencing through veiled glances or carefully placed words. Oh no, the time for such subtleties has passed. The game has moved beyond the courtier's wit, beyond the Sultan's shifting favor. It has descended into something far older, far more primal. Look closely, my ladies. See the serving girl, her head bowed, carrying the silver tray? Upon it, a crystal cup, filled with the sweetest sherbet, shimmering under the light of 1,000 candles. A gift from one hand to another, a gesture of peace, perhaps even affection. But know this, in this world, a smile can be a blade, and sweetness can be the most potent cover for a bitter end. That cup, so innocent in its gleam, holds not just the juice of pomegranates, but the very essence of betrayal. A drop, unseen, unfelt, dissolving into the syrupy depths. A precise strike, a targeted blow, not with sword or arrow, but with a knowledge of the human body's frailties, a whisper of a final, irreversible sleep. One day, a favored concubine, blooming like a rose, is suddenly taken by a fever. The next, a powerful aga, his loyalty questioned, simply vanishes into the night, leaving only the scent of his pipe tobacco lingering in the air. A sudden cough, a weakening breath, a quiet passing in the night. The physicians will shake their heads, mumbling of imbalances, of ill humors. But we, who understand the true architecture of power, we know. These are not accidents of fate. These are the carefully chosen instruments of a will unbound. This is the culmination, is it not? The inevitable harvest of that initial seed of fury. That first slap, delivered in a fit of rage. It did not just sting a cheek, it tore a hole in the fabric of the dynasty. It set in motion a chain of events, each link forged in the crucible of ambition, each leading to this moment where the bloodline itself trembles. And then, the silence. Oh, the silence after such an act. It is not the quiet of peace, but the deafening roar of a new world being born. The air itself seems to thicken, heavy with the unsaid, with the understanding that the old rules, the old decorum, they are dead, crumbled to dust beneath the weight of a ruthless will. A will that has tasted power and found it sweeter than any sherbet. A will that now reigns, absolute, over a hushed and terrified court. That single slap. A mere tremor in the grand architecture of power, yet its resonance shattered more than just pride. Its echo, unheard by the common man, vibrated through the very stones of the palace, rippling outwards, far beyond the gilded gates. Did you feel it? The subtle shift in the air, the sudden chill that crept into the most opulent halls. The map, once so firmly etched by generations of emperors, began to bleed new colors. Borders, declared immutable by decree and conquest, blurred and reformed like shifting desert sands, redrawn not by armies, but by the quiet machinations born of that initial fury. Whole bloodlines, tracing their lineage back to mythical founders, strong as mountain oaks, withered and fell into the dust of history. New faces, some familiar, some risen from the deep shadows of forgotten houses, ascended to thrones that once seemed destined for others. Who truly held the scepter? The hand that wielded the sword, or the mind that whispered the command? This was no clash of armies on an open field, no glorious charge for history books. No, this was a war fought in the suffocating silence of private chambers, where ambition was a slow-acting poison, and loyalty a silken noose tightening around the neck of unsuspecting rivals. Beneath the shimmering silk of royal garments, plots thickened, betrayals bloomed like deadly nightshade. A dynasty, seemingly eternal, received a mortal wound, a crack through its very foundation, from which no amount of gold or glory could heal. Through that fissure, new waters surged, currents of deceit, rivers of ambition, an ocean of insatiable hunger for what was lost and what could be gained. Her rage, that singular blistering fury, once unleashed, became the gale that resculpted the very shores of empires. It swept away the old, carving new paths for power, drawing new lines in the sand of destiny with an invisible yet undeniable hand. A woman's will, forged in the crucible of humiliation, had dared to challenge the established order, and in doing so had rewritten the very script of nations. All of it, remember, from one moment, one touch, one incandescent flash of anger. It served as a stark, brutal reminder to all, from the lowliest servant to the grandest vizier. Even in the lap of unimaginable luxury, under the soft glow of countless lamps, power is a blade, a sharp, unforgiving edge ever poised to cut. And revenge, my dear friends, revenge is a meal prepared with meticulous care, served utterly, irrevocably cold, leaving an indelible mark on the soul of an empire.